Did you find anything in particular that was difficult about your fat loss diet?
The change I had to make for my social life, the hard part was having parties, barbecues, people over, people like bring their own desserts and stuff. And I have such a sweet tooth. I love my desserts.
I struggle with social eating too. And also, I do struggle when it comes to just feeling hunger.
What are your thoughts on staying lean and then how to prevent a rebound?
Here's an extreme example of what probably isn't a good idea and what would probably lead most people to pretty dramatic rebounds. What's going on, everyone? In today's episode, Zach and I talk all about what we've found are the most difficult aspects of fat loss dieting based on our own personal experiences, as well as how we've learned how to cope with those struggles to successfully accomplish our fat loss goals. If you're someone who's ever found fat loss dieting to be a challenge, I think that you're going to find this episode to be both highly relatable and helpful. So, without further ado, let's dive into it. Zach, have you ever participated in a serious or notable fat loss diet?
Yes. And I don't know, what was it, 2022? I think 2023. I don't know when it was now. It was 2023, I think, that year. It's been 2 years. Yes, I lost 45 pounds in like 4 or 5 months, 5 months maybe. And yeah, that wasn't my first time though. I attempted the year before, 2022, but failed miserably, and we can kind of get into that. But yeah, in 2023, I did a dedicated diet to specifically lose weight. But I obviously, like, I think with losing the weight, it was mainly body fat that I was targeting.
Okay. So there's 2023, you lost about 45 pounds, which is crazy. Before that, you mentioned that there was an attempt at fat loss dieting that didn't go so well. So maybe we can talk about that too. But I guess in 2023, when you lost 45 pounds, did you find anything in particular that was difficult about your fat loss diet?
Oh man, that's a good one. I think yes and no. It's weird because it was very difficult to start. Um, but once I started, it was like a drug and I was hooked on it. Um, and in some ways I liked how I was feeling, the progress I was seeing, but it was almost like not a game because it kind of makes light of the issue, but it was almost like I enjoyed getting on the scale every day and seeing and documenting and seeing it try to go down. And then when it would go up, I was like, well, why did it go up? And so trying to figure that out. So I got into a pattern of enjoying that. I think the hardest thing was not doing the things that I needed to do to lose the fat, which we can talk about, was the change in the change I had to make for my social life and the things that I used to do. I think that was the hardest part for me specifically. I'm a very extrovert, but also those changes, like, really, I started seeing second and third order effects of the group of friends I was hanging out with and the things that other people valued. And so I think that was the hardest part at first. But now I think, obviously, like we talked about in the past episodes, looking back, it's the journey and that I needed to get to, and wouldn't change anything.
Got it. Okay, so things that you liked about it, or these are the things that really got you hooked, were like stepping on the scale and seeing yourself make progress. So that was probably motivating, right? Was that the part that
Yes,
got you hooked?
and that and the it took a while, but once people started noticing and you could see the difference in the pictures and how clothes fit and stuff like that.
Got it. Okay, so seeing progress. And then I think you mentioned too, like on the days where maybe you didn't see progress, it was kind of like you could collect data and
Mhm.
make an attempt at trying to problem solve, figure out what you could potentially do to keep the ball rolling.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. Okay. And then the big struggle was the social context. So can you
Yes.
elaborate on that a little bit more? So what specifically, as far as the social eating, mainly what did you find was
Yeah,
really difficult about that?
I think it wasn't so much as like going out to eat and stuff with people because you can get like salads and stuff at a restaurant and still kind of get along. The hard part was having parties, barbecues, people over. I'm a big poker player, and so I like to have poker nights, and people like bring their own desserts and stuff. And I can't. I have such a sweet tooth. I love my desserts, and trying to resist those temptations. But I think the hardest one, and it's probably a big topic we could talk about, was I used to go to like breweries all the time. We would go to like trivia night or music bingo with our group of friends. And so one of the things I decided to do was to give up drinking. But I would still want to go to those things because my friends were still there. My wife still wanted to go. And then it's like you're surrounded by this, and then people are getting feeling good after a few drinks and stuff, and you're just like still sitting there. So that becomes a little bit, more challenging. And then also like with along with all the dieting for fat loss, I was obviously working out as well. You just get more exhausted and you're tired, and it's like I just want to go home and sleep. But you have those obligations for your friends and family and stuff. So I think that was a hard balance.
I get that. Did you find that the most difficult part was that there was food around, or that like it was like just everyone else was drinking and you were left not drinking? So there was that element of the socializing that wasn't in the picture. Was that the tough part?
I think that's the toughest part for when we were out and about. If we were at a house, the toughest part was the food is just sitting around, easily available. So I just snack, grab a chip, grab a chip, grab a chip. Next
Got
thing you know, I ate a whole bag of chips.
Have you found a solution to that, or is that something that you still find yourself struggling with, or is it something that you feel like you got a good handle on now?
um, that's a good question. I mean, before the bodybuilding show, I would have said I had a good handle on it. But a bodybuilding prep will really humble you. Um, I think I definitely have a handle on the drinking and the alcohol. Like I don't drink anymore, and being around it doesn't bother me anymore. And I can go to these breweries and these events. Um, Sometimes I'll drink some like non-alcoholic beverages to kind of just feel like I'm partaking. But there's other days where I don't because I feel like it's a waste of money and a waste of calories. So sometimes I don't even do that. But I still struggle with the uh, like snack food at parties and stuff like that. Just can't help the sweets. I'm telling you, it's like my kryptonite. Um,
So it's just like the temptation of having something kinda, like, sitting out in front of you that you want, and it's hard to, like, say
yeah,
no to it.
because I'm kind of like lazy. It's kind of weird to say that with everything that I've been through. Like I won't make a plate, but if the plate's there, I'm going to eat it. And so, my wife is an awesome host, and so we'll put together all this food before a party. So it's there. But if we didn't have that, I wouldn't go up and make something. That makes sense.
Got it. That's actually something that I find a challenge with fat loss dieting too, and I think it's something that a lot of people relate to, is specifically that social settings, family gatherings where there's lots of
Mhm.
food out on the table, lots of sweets, lots of super tasty stuff that's, like, just calling your name,
Yeah.
and it's really tough to, like, say no to it if you're when you are trying to accomplish something like a fat loss goal.
Hmm.
We So maybe we can talk a little bit more about that, but first, you also mentioned that, so this is the 2023 diet where we started talking about. What about
Hmm.
the other diet that you attempted prior to
Yeah.
that would have been 2022. Can you
Yeah.
describe that?
I think, I don't know if people have heard we talked about goals last time. Um, and having, I think there's that acronym out there, SMART, like specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time based or something like that. Um, I don't think I had a goal during that, and I don't think it was a smart goal. Um, I think I tried to do too much too fast. I remember the first week, I was super excited. I meal prepped, did all this work, but I hadn't built the habit to do that. So that was just like me just trying to jump in and go from 0 to 100. Whereas in the following year, I took a more, I think, balanced approach. Um, and I think that's one of the things that I think people probably struggle with. They either have too big of a goal or they don't have a specific enough goals to make that measurable progress. So instead of losing 45 pounds, which seems crazy, let's just lose half a pound a week. Let's just, whatever. And so I think the year before I didn't have an end goal in mind. I think I remember even saying I just want to like recomp. And I look back now and I'm like, that was dumb. I was in no place to do that. But I don't even remember thinking about it. Whereas the following year, I knew I wanted to get to like 170. So I had that in number in mind. And then it's like you could start doing the math when you want to hit that and what do you need to do. It's like a big math problem. Is really all it is. And so the year I failed, I think I didn't have any goals with it. I tried to do too much, and I didn't go all in. I know we've talked about that in the past of the show. Um, I didn't. I wasn't willing to give up the things that I needed to accomplish that.
Got it. Okay. And then the difference between that fat loss diet that didn't work out so great, and the next
Mhm.
one, which turned out fantastic, you lost 45 pounds, was you did have more of a concrete goal.
Mhm.
And something I'm wondering is you mentioned that your approach was more balanced
Yeah.
for the 2023 diet. Can you elaborate on that? Like, what were some of the differences? I know the first time around you said that, like, you did tons of meal prep for the first week or 2,
Yep.
and, like, you went all out, but that didn't work.
Yeah.
What was the difference, between that one and the next year?
Yeah. I think it's kind of funny because it's kind of hard for me to remember everything specific because I didn't keep like a detailed journal or anything like I do now. Like I wasn't tracking, but I think that was it. I did not meal prep when I lost all that weight, and I did not track my calories. And I felt like if you asked me how many calories I was eating, I would have said like 1,400. But now after like doing the bodybuilding prep, I probably know I was lying to myself and I was probably eating like 1,800, 1,900. But I definitely had less. I was doing intermittent fasting, which is one of the things I did. And I added a ton of cardio, walking specifically on a treadmill. Um, and then the big thing is though, I didn't really change how I ate. I just tried to keep it normal within controls over during the week. The weekend, I would still eat whatever I wanted, but I gave up three major things, which I think for 99% of people, I think will get them where they want to go. I gave up soda. Um, you can still drink diet soda if you want and all that other stuff, but I used to have like rum and cokes all the time, and you just don't realize how much sugar and calories are in there. So I gave up soda, and I have not had soda since I started that. I gave up fast food, so I don't eat at fast food restaurants anymore. Even though I think you could argue, like as long as you eat the right things, it's probably okay. But for me, it's just that temptation. I just avoid that. And then I gave up alcohol. So I gave up alcohol during that for 3.5 months. And then I went back to drinking, but I gave up craft beer. I drank only light beer. Um, and now I've given up alcohol completely. So I gave up those three things. So I think like doing that with the intermittent fasting with and walking for 30 minutes an hour a day alone without me strength training, I would have lost the weight. Um, I feel. But I didn't track anything. I didn't have this burden of, oh, I can't go eat a pizza this weekend. Like I ate tons of junk food. Still.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point, is most people probably could get, at the very least, into a healthy body fat percentage just
Mhm.
from doing those 3 things. And even when I think back, when I really started getting into fitness, and I started lifting weights when I was really young. I was like 12, 13, and I didn't really know anything about nutrition aside from protein good, builds muscle, calories probably good because it'll probably help me build muscle, but that was the extent of my knowledge until I was like early 20s. And that got me pretty far as building muscle. But what it didn't do, it didn't help me with the specific goal of getting like visible abs, which I always wanted when I was young. That came from developing a deeper understanding
Mhm.
of nutrition, but just like focusing on eating like mostly whole foods and lots of protein and eating to fullness for the most part, and training when
Yeah.
I was in middle school, high school, I built a good amount of muscle for my age eventually, and then when I was in college, I had a similar approach. I started intermittent fasting, and I didn't track any calories or anything, but it was just protein, mostly whole foods. If I did eat out, especially in college, it was usually a place that was it was still fast food, but it was
Yeah,
probably better than McDonald's.
like casual fast or whatever they call it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that kept me relatively lean, and it helped me build muscle, I think.
Mhm.
So and I did the same things as you. I was not really eating a ton of junk, and if I was drinking soda, it was always diet soda, so there's no liquid calories. The only
Mhm.
thing was in college was, like, drinking on weekends, so I definitely did that, and that probably held me back. It probably
Undid everything you did the whole week, yeah.
at least to some extent, but when I got but, that got me at the very least within a healthy body fat percentage, and
Mhm.
I built a really good foundation muscle just from doing
Yeah.
that. So
Well,
I had a similar experience for you as far as that goes.
yeah.
Okay, and then
I was gonna say with that, like, I always think like for someone starting out, because it's very like we've talked a lot about the fitness stuff, and it can be very daunting and intimidating. Like instead of adding to it, I've tried to approach it. And the friends I talked to about it, I just talk about taking away things, and I think that's it's less burden on someone. It's easier, and at least in my mind, to it's easier to understand. Okay, I'm just going to give up drinking. It doesn't have to be alcohol all the time. Maybe it's just craft beers. I'm still going to drink like light beer. Then saying you can still drink your craft beer, but you're going to have to do a hit session. You have to go do this, and you're going to have to track your food throughout the week. Like it seems so much easier mentally to just say, okay, maybe I don't need this drink today. So I feel like if people approach it that way and just knew that, um, they would have more success than trying to add on. And then I think just kind of with a balanced approach that we were talking about, because so many people you see it all the time and you read about it and hear about it, like they go hard for 6, 7, 8 days, and then they have that one binge, and it um, undoes all of the progress they make. Because you can have a 10,000 calorie weekend, where you just undid it all. And then that mentally will just really stress you out. So I think having a more balanced approach, just maybe 100, 200 calories, under your maintenance, and that will be progress. Um, but yeah.
yeah, I'm on
Ha-
board
Have
with
you
that.
have you seen that? Like, has that been your experience with just like people you've worked with, or kind of what's the approach? Because I mean, obviously, I think the all in like super detailed approach does work, right? Like it does. I think you have to have the right person, the right mindset, the right foundation, understanding, but also realizing maybe not everyone is gonna be fully committed, but progress is still progress. And then eventually, I think with me, like it was a gut check that I thought I could do, make all that progress. I didn't, but I learned. And then when I was ready, I was able to, to slowly build. So I don't know, like kind of what's your experience with that?
Yeah, from my experience, it depends on I think 2 main things. So one is personality type, that's huge. And
Mhm.
then also where an individual is currently on their journey, like what their current skill set and what knowledge they already have. So if somebody already has a little bit of fat loss experience and like let's say they're like within a healthy body fat percentage, they kind of know calories and macros, um, but they
Mhm.
wanna get really lean, like, they want visible abs, they wanna see lines on their biceps and try separating their biceps and triceps and delts that they've never seen before.
Yeah.
If you take a person like that, they probably would benefit from, a very direct approach
Mhm.
where tracking a little bit more meticulously to accomplish a more advanced goal.
Yeah.
I think that might be a more appropriate to that kind of person, but if it was someone that is brand new to something like fat loss dieting, they don't have a lot of experience with like measuring calories,
Mhm.
macros, they don't have a ton of nutritional knowledge, then a good place to start might be something like a very general approach,
Yeah.
exactly like what your approach was, like the big 3:
Mhm.
soda, junk food, alcohol. Bring those down, and that can lead to a lot of progress right out of the gate. And then maybe that builds some momentum, some progress is made, and then maybe there's a desire to accomplish a more advanced goal where it
Yeah.
would potentially become beneficial to look more closely at calories and macros.
Yeah.
Something else too. So something else about your mindset approach that I really like it. So you're thinking about taking things away in a way that's like making the process feel less burdensome.
Mhm.
Sometimes I like to flip that around. And so like let's say somebody wants to lose body fat, which means that we do need to eat less calories. We in order to be in a caloric deficit, that's how we accomplish fat loss. And that can immediately bring about a sense of less or
Mhm.
just having less. And that can be really a lot of it can lead to a lot of discomfort mentally for people,
Yeah.
I think. And so sometimes I like to flip that around. So instead of thinking about taking food away from your meals,
Mm.
maybe
Mhm.
think about adding food to your meals, but just adding lower calorie dense foods to your meals. So instead of
Yes.
that mindset of always taking away, think about how can I actually add more? So like more of an abundance
Yes.
mindset to your to what you're eating. How can I actually add to my meals whilst
Mhm.
actually
Mhm.
taking away calories to accomplish the fat loss goal? So that can be really helpful depending on the personality. For
Yeah.
me, personally, my personality, that's what does it for me. I'm a high volume eater. I like to
Mhm.
fill my stomach right up when I'm eating. Not everyone's like that, and that's something
Yeah.
that I've learned through working with a lot of people. Some people do not like the feeling of feeling really full and bogged down with food. I'm different. I love feeling really full and bogged down with
Yeah.
food. I love
Yeah.
it. Whether I'm in a if I'm bulking, I like it, and if I'm in a fat loss phase, I like to hang on to that as much as I possibly can. It's a little bit different, but
Yeah. It's funny you say because I've now that you say that, that is totally true. I didn't really experience that with my fat loss, but for the bodybuilding prep, that was huge. Right? Like I tried to eat a lot of the processed protein bars and things like that, and I mean, I tried to work, and you're like, yeah, if it works. And then when I finally saw the light of eating whole foods, so much easier. And I've heard a lot of like um different things online and stuff that if someone wants to lose weight, you actually don't restrict anything. You just tell them to eat 150, 200 grams of protein or whatever, and good luck. And then see how much more you want to eat after that, right? Like hit your protein goal, and people will be shocked at how much protein they have to eat. And if you just say, hey, do it in these types of foods like chicken, whole food, right? Like that's a lot. You can't supplement it. If you just tell someone, hey, for a week, try it, and you can't have like a protein shake with it where you can get a ton of protein in there, like they're not gonna want to eat anything else. Um, so yeah, I kind of forgot about that. And because I'm trying to remember, I definitely tried to eat more protein, but it wasn't as much this year because that was my goal in 2024 was to start putting on muscle. But I also maybe this is with the restriction, but in a different way of not taking away more. I also gave myself a cap to not eat after like 7 p.m. Um, because for me, I was a big late night snacker. So I found out I was eating because I was bored. We'd sit there and watch Netflix like everyone does. Everyone's out there watching Netflix, Hulu, whatever it is. And it's like in our culture, I guess. I don't know. It's in our DNA to go grab that bag of chips, the bowl of ice cream, and sit there and eat. And then you realize you're not even hungry. And then afterwards, you feel like crap about yourself, but you do it anyways. Um, so once I told myself, like, hey, after dinner, I'm not going to have any more snacks, I'm not going to eat. I was going to bed earlier too, which I think helps because you get better sleep, but also um, you're not tempted to eat later. And the last point I had was this kind of goes into the next level about starting to track and understand because I think a lot of people just don't understand when you talked about how many calories are in drinks. People don't understand when they go get a coffee from Starbucks that that thing has like 800 calories in it. When they put all this whipped cream and everything else. What me and my wife started doing, we started doing HelloFresh, um, which there's a lot of different companies out there that do these meal prep things. Not really meal prep. I don't know what it's called, but they ship you to meals. And my wife would cook them, and I remember the first time having it. It was like this meal, like it's usually like a meat, a vegetable, and a starch or something, and it was like 700 calorie meal, and I'm like, I ate it like super fast. I'm like, where's the rest of it? And it opened up my eyes that that is like a correct portion. You know, so you're talking about like like we fill up with so much like calorie dense foods that like processed foods. And so for me, I was like, oh, that's how much I'm supposed to eat. And then I didn't eat afterwards. So, I mean, that was a lot of information I kind of dropped right there. But yeah, I definitely saw the light after this bodybuilding show to eat more whole foods, good foods, and you're not as hungry. And I think you feel better as well. Your body just functions a little bit better, I think, when you don't have all that processed stuff in you.
Yeah. What's one of the best things from my experience is if you're just starting with fat loss dieting, is to like seek out just a little bit of education and knowledge
Hmm.
about the calorie content of the foods that you have been eating, and just that right there can be eye-opening enough to start to change some habits. You know, I mentioned earlier, you asked me about my experience working with people and like what the best approach is for different people. And my default usually is to get people to start tracking pretty early on right away. So
Hmm.
even if they are new, and maybe the first big steps are maybe they don't make a full meal plan right out of the gate, but at the very least they start to learn a little bit about tracking calories, like the food that they have been eating.
Yeah.
And then pretty quickly on, I'll usually encourage that we start to put a meal to plan together relatively
Hmm.
quickly, because once you have that initial bit of awareness that and you have something to work with, then why not put that to use early on, get
Yeah.
results really quickly right away, and then motivation builds really quickly
Hmm.
right away,
Hmm.
like you learned, especially with the bodybuilding competition.
Yeah. Do you
Um,
think, with that point about uh, the tracking and the education of it, I've heard different things about it. Like, you know, someone starting off, maybe before even attempting to change anything, just document, write down everything you eat for like 2 weeks, like kind of get a baseline, to figure out what your maintenance is and all this other stuff. But in a sense that it's no stress on you, you know, like, hey, we're no judgment, we're not trying to change it. Like, just write down what you're eating every day, and it's okay. Yeah, like because I suspect two things happen. People don't document everything, which we can go into deeply later. Um, or you know, they don't maybe fully understand, you know, how much like there's so many things where if like that's what I struggle with. It's not on a processed food. So like what am I how much is that? And they underestimate, you know, like, oh, I just had, you know, a handful of chips or a pound of meat or something, but it's not a clear determination. Um and yeah, so I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
yeah, I think that can work really, really well. It's that initial
Hmm.
step of developing a ton of awareness and starting to develop a desire to wanna shift things. Because if you start to take a look at how you've been eating the past 2 weeks and you find out that you're eating like 1,000, 2,000 calories more than you thought you were,
Yeah.
plus you're probably not recording everything, and it might open up more questions to yourself, like what you just mentioned. Maybe you realize like, oh, I don't even know how to measure things. It's like
Hmm.
I had a
Hmm.
slab of meat, but I don't know how do I know how many calories are in this slab of meat? And then it starts opening up questions, and
Yeah.
eventually the answer is, well, maybe I need to measure it by using a food
Mhm.
scale, and that's how I find out. So I like it. It develops a lot of awareness right out of the gate, and it would get a person to start asking questions like, how do I measure the foods that I'm eating?
Mhm.
that when you seek out the solution or the answer to those questions actually helps things later on.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that probably works great
Do you
for a
do you
lot of
think do you think people maybe don't wanna start that, like, because deep down they don't wanna know the answer? Like, they know that they don't wanna know the answer?
honestly, yeah. When you were
Yeah.
talking earlier and you said, "Well, it's no stress. It's no stress to do something like that." But I actually do think I think that
Mhm.
is a lot I think that that can be a real stressor for people, and a lot of people
Yeah.
avoid doing that on purpose because they probably suspect, like, I'm
Yeah,
telling
you
myself.
know when you don't feel good. You know there's a reason why.
Yeah.
I feel like there's you're talking about the education. I totally agree, but I don't think people are so ill-informed. Like, in today's age, people know why they're overweight. People know why they have extra body fat. They might not know exactly the science and detail about how to get rid of it, but they know, like, move more, eat less, like, take out the junk food, you watch what I eat, like, people know that. They just don't wanna I don't know, it kinda goes back to our very first episode about figuring out, like, that desire, um, and drive and the kind of that approach to it. Um, but I think all these things and trying to figure it out to give them, like, the least barrier to entry, I think is good. Like, "Hey, let's track this. Let's figure out what maintenance is. Let's start a meal plan that gives you more food, not less. Let's hit, like, protein goals that you're gonna feel full. Let's give up some alcohol and soda for a little bit. Let's get 8 hours of sleep. Let's go for a walk in the morning with your black coffee, and then you'll be chilling." Um, it's funny because, like, I'm sure people watching this are like, "Huh, so easy for these guys. Like, look at
Easier said
them."
than done.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, Sam's been doing this since he was, like, a kid.
Well,
But,
what's interesting?
yeah.
You actually mentioned this earlier, I think, unless I'm remembering wrong, but you said that it was tough at the beginning for that 2023 diet. It was like it was tough at the
Mhm.
beginning, but then you got hooked. I think that's what you said,
Yes.
right? So the
Yep,
question
yep.
is, why is it tough at the beginning? And I think it's like, well, it's making the initial change. So I think about, like, for myself, I ask myself, and I'm asking myself this right now, what are the hardest parts about fat loss dieting for me? Because I'm
Mm,
pretty experienced at it, but I don't always think it's easy, and I do find that there are certain parts of it that are difficult, and I'm not always fat loss dieting. So we talked
yeah.
about right at the beginning of our conversation too, but I'm not always fat loss dieting. Like right now, I'm not. I'm like in a little bit of a surplus. I'm gaining until
Feeling
July, and then
good?
I'll start a
Yeah.
fat loss diet. Yes, but so I'm asking myself right now, what are the most difficult parts about fat loss dieting for me? And I can already feel something, or I
Mhm.
think I'm on the verge of having one answer. And it's something like, so I'm thinking about starting my fat loss diet in July, and there is a little bit of reluctance about it.
Mm,
Like,
mhm.
okay, now I'm eating in a little bit of a surplus. There's more food. There's more of an abundance of energy. I get to put more stuff in my stomach, or I
Yeah.
get to put more energy in my stomach. And I guess there's an immediate little bit of reluctance in that I'm gonna be taking in less of something. So just this
Mhm.
mindset of less,
Mhm.
that is something that hits me right away. And I know this is kind of contradictory because earlier I was saying, well, I'll just shift your mindset and
Yeah,
focus
just eat more
on
Whole Foods. Yeah.
eating more. So yeah, so that is a strategy that I'm going to do for myself. But even so, even with that strategy, if I'm being super honest with myself, maybe other people can relate to this. I still do feel a little bit of that. It's like even if I'm not eating
Mhm,
less food volume because I'll just eat more vegetables,
mhm.
I'm going to be taking in less energy. And something about that from a mindset perspective, I feel a little bit of initial reluctance on, and I always feel that in retrospect when
Interesting.
just start a fat loss diet. I usually feel like that little bit of an edge going into it.
Mhm.
But if I remember to every time I do a fat loss diet, it usually is gone within, like, honestly 24 hours. First day I'm into the fat loss diet, it's like,
Okay,
oh, that
yeah.
was no big deal. So
It's
it's
like getting in
usually
a
just
cold tub or a hot like, once you get used to it, you're good. Don't just
yeah.
jump in.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like just the getting started, it's the anticipation going into it from my mindset perspective can sometimes leave me feeling a little bit reluctant about it. But yeah, as you put it,
Interesting.
it's just like, I guess we'll use the cold
Yeah.
bath analogy.
I
So
That's
there's that
funny.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. What you're
Go
saying was
ahead.
that no, I was gonna say, like, as you were saying, I was trying to think of kind of mine because I'm kind of in the same boat right now. After the show, I put on 15 pounds, and now I'm like, okay, I need to stop that now. Because it feels good. I feel strong. I feel awesome. But like, let's get it under control a little bit. And it's just for me, it's just a mental shift. Like, and I think the hardest part is just anytime you change a habit, anytime you do something uncomfortable, it's no different, I think, than going to do like for us, but for you who loves to lift with these Bulgarian split squats, like it's like going
Love
into
it
it,
and
knowing
hate it.
it's yeah, like you know it's gonna suck, but like you're gonna do it anyways. It's like when I know I'm gonna go for a long run. It's like, okay, like you have to like you know it's gonna suck, but you know you're gonna feel good afterwards. And I think that's the for use, especially I think for me as I'm learning this as I'm getting better at it, is we've seen the results of it and we know how great it is on the other side. We know as we're going through it, we're optimizing, our body's getting in tune with itself. We love how we feel, we love how we look. And it's kind of cool as you can not manipulate because that has a negative connotation. Like you can adjust your body based on what your goals are at that time. But I think for the first person, like they just don't know because they haven't experienced that on the other side. And it's like, for me, it's very frustrating because now that I've seen the light, like I want to tell them and teach them, but it's like the kid has to put his hand on the stove to find out it's hot. Like they have to figure it out. And that's the thing that sucks. We can help them. We can help them. It's like, but you always say like there has to be the want in that person to go for it. But I think as long as we can make it a path of least resistance and then also show them there's results, like and being just honest. Like I think it was very interesting that you said like for you who does all these preps, these fat loss stages, these bulks or whatever we want to call them, like it's still it's like a mental like, oh, okay,
Oh yeah.
tomorrow. Like I think that's super important for people to know. You've been doing this for a long time, and that's okay because doing hard things makes us stronger. Like we've talked about that as well in the past. So,
You know what else helps me put things into perspective too is and pretty this pretty much covers anything fitness related, whether it's lifting weights or fat loss dieting or whatever, is every decision that you make, there's a trade-off. So like
mhm,
fat loss dieting, for example. So you fat loss diet so that you can get leaner and get everything that comes with getting leaner that you want. So
mhm,
all the aesthetic bonuses that you get, plus feeling better, more energetic, so on and so forth. But the trade-off for that is you have to eat less calories and experience everything that comes with eating less calories. But it's just
mhm.
that's what it is. Everything, every decision, every path that you go down involves some kind of a trade-off. And then
Yep.
it helps me to actually it helps me thinking about that to put things into perspective. So it's like, okay, I'm doing this fat loss diet and the negative trade-offs are eating less calories. I
Mhm,
am gonna get to a point where I'm more hungry than I would be if I'm not on a fat loss diet, and we can talk about, like, maximizing how satiating your meals are, because that's a strategy that I do for myself to make the diet as easy as
mhm.
possible, but even so, even when I try to make everything as satiating as possible, like, I still have a little bit more of an edge of hunger than I would if
Yep.
I'm not fat loss dieting, and eventually, like, in a contest prep diet, like, you know, eventually, it just there's not really anything you can do. Make your meals as satiating as you possibly can. It's just gonna be uncomfortable for a long time.
Yep.
That's a trade-off. But the positive trade-off is, at least for me, and this is what helps put things into perspective for me in a good way, is it's actually worth the positive trade-off. So, like, in
Mhm.
the context of fat loss dieting for bodybuilding competition, heck yeah, it's worth feeling a little bit of
Yeah.
hunger and, like, you know, that little bit of an
Yep.
edge of hunger and that initial mindset reluctancy to start the fat loss diet. It's worth the trade-off. That's something that helps put things into perspective is maybe this goes into the or this connects with the past conversations that we've had about desire and, like,
Mhm.
my desire for the positive trade-off of getting lean outweighs the
Yeah.
desire for the other trade-offs that I'm actually giving up.
Yeah, and I also think, as you were saying that just made me think, like, having your goals and having your fitness and your muscle building, you're getting lean or whatever your goals are, like optimize, right? Like I know, like people don't have to diet for fat loss to become a bodybuilder. People don't have to diet for fat loss to be a marathon runner. Like whatever you want to do, I think you should tool your body for that, right? Because you're going to be in sync. Then, like your goals are going to be concurrent, and it's going to help, right? So, if you love running, you should probably have a diet that supports that as well. That could be a fat loss. That could be something that fuels you with carbs or whatever for your long runs. If you're into powerlifting, right? Like, so you don't necessarily care how you look, but you want to lift heavy things. All these different things. I think you have these goals, but with the asterisks of balance and realizing anything to an extreme is unhealthy, right? Like if you're a power lifter and you're just putting on mass so you can lift heavy things, eventually that's going to come at a, like you said, like a negative. There's gonna be a positive and negative. Maybe your cardiovascular health is gonna suffer. If you're in a bodybuilding prep all the time, like it's unsustainable to be at 5% body fat for all year long, right? Like, so I think everything in balance and then being okay with that. So you're talking about you're in a surplus right now. You're okay with that because you have a goal, you have a purpose, everything is time based. And I think for the average person out there who's maybe interested in this, wants to start their fat loss, maybe wants to build more muscle, maybe wants to eventually get on the stage, but like, or the goal could be, hey, I want to live past 70 and be able to pick up my grandkids. Like, so what does that mean I have to do? I have to probably lose all this extra body fat. I have to get up and be able to walk. I have to have enough strength to be able to bend over and pick up a kid, enough flexibility and mobility to bend over. Like, so I think is people just realize like whatever their goals are, and then but fat loss and fitness plays a part in whatever those goals are. I don't know if that, like that, hopefully that resonated with some people. I don't know if that makes sense, but as you were saying that,
Yeah.
I was like, just go with the goals. Now, I think you and I are probably partial towards, um, you know, getting lean, building strength, because I think that is pretty optimal. I'm not saying those other things are bad, but I think it's a good balance for most of the things that you need to do in life.
Yeah. I think another thing that, and this goes along the lines of what you were just saying, is I think it can actually help to also put things into perspective. If you're doing something like fat loss dieting, is noting that it isn't a forever thing. So it's like,
Mm-hmm,
it's not like
mm-hmm,
when you start a fat loss diet, maybe it is a little bit uncomfortable, but it isn't something that you're going to be doing forever. Ideally, you do it until you accomplish the fat loss goal, and then you shift. And ideally too, especially if it's like your first fat loss diet, you do it, and if you do it really well, then you would gain healthy habits along the way, and you'd probably hopefully pick up some good eating habits as you lose body fat, so that eventually you accomplish your fat loss goal, and then it's actually easy to maintain
mm-hmm.
after that, maintain your level of leanness because you picked up good habits like eating less junk food or not drinking soda, drinking diet soda instead or something else, like some of those big ones, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that can help to put things into perspective, is just knowing things like you start a fat loss diet, it's kind of uncomfortable, but it's not a forever thing. So you maybe just have to experience the discomfort of it for a limited period of time, and you can just have a little bit of peace of mind in knowing that eventually it's
Yeah.
going to end. Things are going to get easier. Now that being said, I think, and I mentioned this earlier, but from my experience doing something like a fat loss diet, what I like to do for myself is I like to make the fat loss diet as easy as possible. This is a
Mm-hmm.
strategy to make dieting easier, is to actually make the diet very satiating. This works really well for me. Very satiating. What does satiating mean? It basically means getting full from your meal and staying as full as is comfortable between
Mm-hmm.
meals, so that you don't have a desire to snack, and you're not thinking about food between your lunch and your dinner. So I like to make my meals really filling and satiating while
Mm-hmm.
staying in a caloric deficit, and I do that by including like high volumes of low calorie dense foods like vegetables, um, very lean protein sources like 0% dairy products, or like really lean meats, white fish, or different types of seafood. So meals that are very high volume, but relatively low calorie because the foods are low calorically dense. So that's what I like to do for myself. But even when
Mhm.
doing that, and I think you can relate to this, I still will feel like an edge of hunger. And in
Yeah.
something like, depending on how far you take the fat loss diet, how much body, how lean you want to get, the leaner you get, from my experience, the more hungry you're going to feel. And there's a reason for that. So I don't know if you know this, but
Mhm.
your fat tissue, it releases, I can't remember if it's leptin or ghrelin, one of those
Okay.
2 hormones. Those are the hormones that signal hunger or fullness.
Mm.
Your fat cells actually secrete the hormone that signals fullness. So if you have a lot
Okay.
of fat cells, or let's just say you have more fat tissue. I don't know if it's like the number of cells or the size of the cells, but let's say you have more fat tissue. Theoretically, you should be producing more of the hormone that signals that you're full, which means that if you
Ah.
have if you have less fat tissue, you're secreting less of that hormone. So
Mhm.
that means that your body isn't experiencing the signal that's saying, "Hey, I'm full," which means what?
Yeah.
It means that you're probably going to be more hungry and more hungry more frequently. So the leaner you get, especially when you get really, really lean,
Mhm.
it's kind of hunger, but will be almost unavoidable. And this is most
Yeah.
apparent when you get to the extreme. So I think most people, when you're at a healthy body fat percentage, like, you're going to be just fine. But I think this is like, it gets much more noticeable when
Yeah.
you get really, really lean. So you can relate to this for sure, because like, you've done the bodybuilding prep thing, and
Mhm.
that's my experience. Is the leaner I get, the deeper into the fat loss diet I get, the more hunger I experience.
Yeah.
And the reason I bring this up, and this isn't to say that, like, if whoever's listening, you're new to fat loss dieting, and you're trying to trying to go from 250 pounds to 200 pounds. If you're feeling hungry when you get close to 200 pounds, that still checks out too. You've got less fat tissue, you're secreting
Mhm.
less of that hormone, so it checks out that you'll feel more hungry too. But anyways, the reason I bring this up is I think that when you're seriously fat loss dieting, hunger is going to be inevitable at some point, even when
Yeah.
you make your meals as satiating as possible. So, I guess my question for you, as someone who has had several, at least two, very serious fat loss diets. So, you lost 45 pounds that first time, which is no joke. Plus, you did your bodybuilding diet and you got
Mhm.
peeled for that. You got really shredded for that. So, my first question for you is, did you ever find yourself getting hungry? And my second question is, how did you cope with the hunger?
Um, yeah, hungry all the time. I don't remember specifically on the first fat loss phase feeling hungry. And I probably was, but it wasn't like a memorable thing. I think it was just I was so dialed in and so focused, and because of the balanced approach, I think it helped alleviate that. Like, so the weekends was kind of like my catch up. So I was probably like dropping a ton of weight throughout the week, and then I would gain up all my calories. So I was still losing a pound a week, but I probably could have been losing 2 pounds a week. But I got all those calories back on the weekend. But I stayed so busy that I don't even think I had time to think about it. I mean, I was doing a ton during that time. I probably was. It just wasn't memorable. Um, Definitely got super hungry during the bodybuilding prep, and I think the thing that helped me the most, and I hope you'll appreciate this, is we had a conversation. I can't remember when it was. It was after the new year, after I actually started trying. Because the first 2 months, I feel like I didn't make any progress. Um, when you made this comment, and I remember it now. It's like, when you're hungry, that's good. That means your body's like eating the fat. And so I was like, you know what? I like that because I don't have to be doing anything and I'm making progress towards my goal. Like, how awesome. My body is doing the work for me. I don't have to go to the gym for an hour. I don't have to go on the treadmill for an hour. My body's just going to do it for me. I'm going to get lean by not doing anything. So going back to maybe it's all tied together. My mindset of not doing anything is actually easier than doing something. Um, but something about that just stuck with me. It's like, good. Being hungry is good. That means it's working, which is like it's flipping the negative to a positive. You know, if like your instinct is, oh, I'm hungry, I should go eat. All you have to do is flip that signal as hungry means good, it's working. Um, and then you wake up the next morning, and the first thing you do is you get on the scale, you see that progress, and it's validation of what you did worked. But if you didn't, and you go and eat that snack, the scale ain't gonna lie, you know, it's gonna tell you. So I think for me, that's kind of how I approached dealing with that. And then, yeah, we already talked about how I started eating more of the whole foods, stopped eating the processed stuff as much. I kind of gave up. I know when we first started talking about for the bodybuilding prep, I had a couple non-negotiables, and this goes with like someone who's just starting a fat loss. I think a non-negotiable, like I, I'm pretty. I think the top three we were talking about. Maybe you can get away with fast food. Depends what you eat at fast food, but if someone is serious about fat loss at whatever level, they should consider giving up soda and alcohol. It if they say that's a non-negotiable, I have to go drink. They might not. We need to unpack that. We need to figure out what their real goals are. And I think for me, for the bodybuilding prep, I think I remember saying I'm gonna still go out to eat on those trivia nights. I'm gonna eat the salad at the store. I'm still gonna eat the dinners that my wife makes. Um, and I think next year is gonna be so much better because I've learned from those. And so those non-negotiables, I'm gonna obviously adjust those.
Yeah. Well, that's part of the trade-off thing. So it works to an extent, right? So you can get down to a certain level of leanness with absolutely including those things, those non-negotiables, going out frequently, I should say frequently enough. So like
Yeah.
once, twice a week, like it's totally doable. Get down to a healthy body fat percentage, beach body level
Yep.
of leanness, but maybe getting like super, super peeled takes making some different trade-offs potentially.
Mhm.
But yeah, okay, so some of the takeaways that I got from what you said were, so for especially for that first diet, like you didn't feel it hunger as much. You weren't thinking about it as much, and maybe that checks out because you started when you were a higher body fat percentage.
Yeah.
So you had more adipose tissue, you had more fat tissue. Um, but you mentioned that you were really busy. So maybe that's a good takeaway is
Mhm.
keeping yourself busy can be helpful because if you're busy with other things with work or activities or fun stuff or family or whatnot, then you're just not going to be spending it thinking about how hungry you are. So maybe that's a
Yeah.
really good strategy. I love that.
Mhm.
And then changing your frame of thought. So instead of thinking like, "Oh crap, I'm hungry right now. Hunger bad, need to go eat." It's like, "Oh no, this is actually a good thing." So
Yeah.
changing your perspective, changing your frame of mind on that can be really helpful. That's something that I like to do for myself too.
Yeah. No, I love that. I thought that was the best advice. I mean, there's a lot of good advice you gave me, but that one specifically for that was awesome. So you kind of mentioned this earlier, and 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 this is gonna be interesting. So you talked about, fat loss phase is not forever, and I think that's interesting and a good point. Um, because having that goal where you want to go, but like, how then does someone transition from the fat loss phase to just maintenance? I think that is a difficult process within itself. Um, and then how do they prevent the rebound? Because I think you see it. Everyone knows a person who did an awesome weight loss transformation. 2 years later, they're back up to where they started, or even worse. Um, and I find that very interesting, but also upsetting and sad and frustrating. Like, because you had it, you knew what to do, and like, what happened to like rebound? Was it a mental thing? Was it like life stressors? So I think there's two parts of that. Like, how do you prevent the rebound? 3 months from then or 3 years from then, and then how do you stay lean? Because I think I have struggled with that because I got all the way down to 165, and then I told myself I want to put on muscle, and I gained 15 pounds, and then I lost some for the show, and now I've gained again. So I'm like, I'm kind of in this, but it's within an acceptable range. And I think each person has to, like, I know when I see 190 on the scale, no, no. Like, I think I feel good at 180, 182. I think optimal, 177, shredded, 170. right? Like buff is, right now 188. Like, so those are just like the numbers I'm feeling right now. But when I see that 190, too much. When I see 160, too low. And so I like to work in those margins. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on staying lean and then how to prevent a rebound?
What I've learned is one of the best things that you can do is approach the initial fat loss diet, like just getting started. The initial approach to the fat loss diet can determine how successful you are at not just losing the body fat, but staying lean. So here's
Hmm.
here's an extreme example of what probably isn't a good idea and what would probably lead most people to pretty dramatic rebounds. Something like a juice cleanse. So like, hey, I
Mm-hmm.
want to lose 30 pounds. I want to lose 30 pounds really fast. So for the next 60 days or 40 days or whatever, I'm going to do some kind of a juice cleanse or some extreme approach like that. So it's a fat loss diet. You would be, without tracking, you would be dramatically decreasing your calories, but you would
Hmm.
be doing throw and you would, and in doing so, you would be rapidly losing body fat from being in such an extreme caloric deficit.
Hmm.
But the problem with that is it's such an unsustainable means of fat loss that once a person were to lose their desired amount of body fat, what do you do after that point?
Yeah.
That's the problem. If the means in which you initially lose the body fat is unsustainable, then you're left not knowing what to do once you've accomplished the goal.
Yeah.
So what would you do? You just go back to what you were doing before. The way of eating that left you 30 pounds heavier, 40 pounds heavier in the first place. And then there you go. Next couple of weeks, you're back to square one, right where you started. So that's an extreme example. And I mean, there's other examples. So like going, doing something like this is a very common one, like cutting out carbohydrates altogether, cutting
Hmm.
out sugar altogether. So, very extreme approaches. They're very simple. They're very
Right.
quote unquote easy because they're simple, but they're at the same time very difficult
Yeah.
because they're not sustainable. Once you accomplish the fat loss goal, then what do you do after that? Because you'll probably be uncomfortable. Are you going to maintain no sugar forever or no carbohydrates forever? Maybe some people could, but I think that most people would really, really struggle with that. So I think the
Hmm.
solution is approaching the fat loss diet through a means that's more sustainable.
Yeah.
So what's always worked well for me, and this is something that I like to teach the people that I work with, is to put together a meal plan or some kind of a fat loss dieting approach that leaves you feeling comfortable with the meals that you're eating. So I mentioned this earlier, but leaving you feeling as satiated as possible.
Hmm.
So comfortably full throughout the day. Again, the extreme example, juice cleanse, maybe it wouldn't be for very long that you'd have to do it to lose a lot of weight, but you'd probably be pretty uncomfortable throughout the entire process. Versus
Yeah.
if you were to make your meals as satiating as possible, you'd be more comfortable throughout the process. So I think that's a big one.
Hmm.
Another big one would be convenience. So taking a fat loss dieting approach where you can prep your meals in advance, maybe spend 1 or 2 days a week, like, as having designated meal prep days, really simple, easy, put the meals
Yeah.
together and make it easier for yourself to just, like, nuke, your meals when you get home from work, or you bring them with you to work. It just makes life a lot easier. So convenience, or if you don't meal prep, the meals are convenient enough that you can just put them together relatively quickly when
Yeah.
you're really hungry after work. So logistics and convenience, I think that's a big one. And then I think the third biggest factor or variable to making the approach sustainable would be just making sure that the meals taste good enough. And I don't think they need to be like super, super fancy and like, 3 Michelin star like fat loss dieting meals. But like I think that you can still make simple meals
Yeah.
that taste good or at least good enough. And the cool part about fat loss dieting is if you do it really well, or at least this is the approach that I like to take, is like eating mostly whole foods that are very
Mhm.
satiating, still making them taste as good as possible, but your palate actually changes over
Yes.
time. So maybe you put together these simple whole foods based meals that, they taste pretty good in the beginning, but they're still a little bit plain. If you stick with them for a couple of weeks, they'll probably start to taste better and better the deeper
Yes.
you get into the diet, because your palate does change. So I think that's actually a benefit of sticking with whole foods and just really staying consistent with it, is eventually the meals taste better. But anyways, on the flip side, it's probably not sustainable again to do something like a juice cleanse
Yeah.
where, like,
Yeah.
I mean,
No
maybe you
juice
have a couple
cleanse.
different, yeah, maybe you have a couple different juice flavors. I'm sure you would in a juice cleanse. I don't know. I'm not familiar with any of them,
Mhm.
but the flavors probably taste good, but you'd probably be really yearning for something else.
Yeah.
So if you
S
could avoid that sensation and have
yeah.
something that does taste at least good enough, then I think you'd be on the right track.
So, I thought of a couple things, and some of it's historical with me, and then some of it is, like, today, with me. So, the thing you're talking about, like, with making it taste good, and this goes into education and tracking, especially during the bodybuilding prep, is when I learned this. Today we live in the best time of society ever, and pretty much every food that you want to eat that's a quote unquote unhealthy or whatever is the same thing but like less calorie. So like I made pancakes on Sunday. I buy the premium protein pancake mix. So instead of normal, I buy that. It still has a lot of decent amount of calories, but it has protein in it more. Um, I mix it with protein powder. Shout out Legion. French vanilla in there makes it really fluffy, and I put an egg in there. You can just do egg whites, but you kind of want the yolk to mix it up. And then I use like low sugar syrup, right? And like it's 5 calories a teaspoon. Taste, I mean, you can't tell the difference. I'll make an omelet with just like egg whites instead of eggs. Like it's so much food and you're getting tons of protein. So like as I started figuring that out, there's everything. I don't eat peanut butter anymore. I eat the PB2 that I make my own, the powder. It's like less calories, more protein in it. There's just tons of different things out there that you can make. One thing you talked about meal prep, I struggle with this still, man. Because when I'm not in the specific goal right now about like the bodybuilding prep, it's like, do I need a meal prep? And I kind of get lazy. So I did meal prep this week and I've been like scrounging. Dude, I'm telling you, we have like, I don't know. I like it's not healthy. I don't advise this. But like today, I kind of punish myself. So when I don't meal prep, but I also think it's good. It builds discipline over time. It's like I didn't meal prep, so I was lazy. I didn't do the right thing, but that doesn't mean I get to eat whatever I want. So today I kind of suffered because of my lack of planning. And then hopefully I will learn and plan. So like today I had 2 Greek yogurts that were at work. I had a couple rice cakes with PB2 peanut butter on it and an apple. And I was freaking starving when I came home. But it's like, who can we blame? You know what I mean? Someone asked me at work, hey, do you want anything from the store? I'm gonna go grab. No. Like, oh, you know what I mean? Like, I should just meal prep. I got a ton of shrimp, and I was gonna make shrimp like fajita things and bring it in like Tupperware, and I just never got around to cooking it. Um, so it's just funny when you said that because it made me think about it. And I had another thing that I was thinking when you were talking about the quick different juice. So I during
Such a
the
good example.
I know, right? So I don't I don't I don't think this is a smart for fat loss. I can get on board with intermittent fasting because I think more people intermittent fast than they think because all you have to do is skip breakfast, which a lot of people do anyways, and therefore you've intermittent fasted. But and I did a 3-day fast in that summer that maybe it was last summer actually. I don't know what summer it was. I did a 3-day fast and that was interesting. Um, and yeah, talking about all the emotions of food, you didn't think you can go through so many emotions of food in 3 days. It's like super hungry, feeling awesome, want to feel like hell, like so But for me, it was more of a cleanse and like a mental discipline aspect that I wanted to do it. I know a lot of people do it for like spiritual reasons and all these other things. So I just wanted to see, I think don't judge anything until you try it, kind of thing. Um, but I think all of this and the bodybuilding prep really played um, a part in this. Is we've talked about this in the past, delayed gratification, like fat loss and just staying lean, getting in shape, fitness is a long project. You cannot, there's no quick fix to it. So you could fast, you could do a juice cleanse, you could do whatever this is. You could sit in the sauna for hours and lose a ton of weight, but it's not going to be sustainable, and you're not developing that skill and that discipline of that, and then getting that delayed gratification of the hard work you've put over time. So I think like I'm a big fan of the goals. Well, I'll talk about it till I'm blue. Even if you don't want to be a bodybuilder show or whatever, I think it's really cool still to like schedule a shoot, like a photo shoot, or hey, we have a wedding coming up, or hey, we're going to the beach. I have this amount of time. I have this goal. So you have something to work towards. Cause I do think you kind of brought it up. What do you do then? Like once you've hit it, you don't have a goal or a reason, then you kind of feel like limbo afterwards. Even if you've built the good habits, I think you still could have it could be a struggle to figure out what's next. So I don't know if any of that resonated, but basically meal prep so you don't have to eat rice cakes and an apple.
Yeah, no, I like that. I think having those kind of milestone type goals, it's basically a target to set your aim to. Having something like that is really helpful. And if you do it really well, you take a sustainable approach, then you can learn along the way. Once you hit the target, you've developed a new skill set. So like you noted, learning things like, hey, I can make pancakes, but with protein powder and an egg and some other stuff. And it's lower calorie and high protein with low sugar syrup that's tastes just as sweet and delicious. And like I'm still losing body fat and it tastes better and there's more protein
Yeah.
in it. So you're learning that kind of thing on the way down. So you're developing that skill set. And then, like you noted, then maybe just having another goal to set your sights on, it becomes much more simple at that point. If you do set your eyes on another goal, and if you don't initially, at least you do have that skill set. So even though you were kind of joking about like you didn't meal prep, so it was like, okay, rice cakes and some like peanut butter and like a couple of Greek yogurts, was really uncomfortable. But at the end, and even though like maybe there was an alternative to that, but you ended up making that decision because of what you learned in past fat
Mhm.
loss diets, right? So maybe in the past version of Zach would have been like, oh, screw it, I'm gonna go order a pizza. Right.
Yeah.
So, and maybe that would have been more comfortable in the moment, but in the grand scheme of things, it might not have been as helpful for you in the bigger picture. So even though it's kind of, I mean, it does suck. Like listening to you describe that day of eating, like makes me like I got like a cold sweat just thinking about it. But in the grand scheme of things, even though it sucked, maybe it was like overall something that was better for you in the grand scheme of things and like what the past version of Zach might have done. And that was
Yeah.
a byproduct of what you've learned through past fat loss diet. So
Dude, that is such a great point that I didn't even realize. Yeah, like 2 years ago, I would have never even considered that, right? Now that I think about it, when I, you know, was 45 pounds heavier, I used to, now that, I don't know why I'm remembering this now. I used to go for lunch 3 times a week to KFC and get a
oof.
KFC meal and a Dr. Pepper soda, and like just thinking about it. And I used to sit there and eat it in my car and how greasy it is now. Like I can't even imagine. Like it's just crazy. And and I want everyone out there, like if you're like listening to this and you're eating KFC right now, like it's not the end of the world, right? Like it's okay. It's protein. But like it is okay. Like I don't know. It's just crazy because just such a short time, 2 years, how much has changed and just how my thought process is kind of just crazy. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a total paradigm shift. That's something that helps me. So my big struggles with fat loss are so like the initial or with fat loss dieting are like the initial entering into the fat loss diet, so that little bit of mental reluctance about being
Mhm.
in an energy deficit, so just having less energy, that kind of is a bit of a struggle. The other one is similar to what you mentioned earlier, like, I struggle with social eating too,
Mhm.
and I've got ways of coping with that, and also, like, I do struggle when it comes to just feeling hunger at some point, like, it's
Yeah.
still uncomfortable, so it's always a struggle, and it always takes coping mechanisms, but there are coping mechanisms, and you can overcome them, but it's just a matter of
Yeah.
taking
Eh,
the steps to overcome them.
yeah, it's funny you say it because even now, like, the last couple of days, I've probably this week, I mean, I think it's because 'cause I'm sick too, and I'm not eating as much as I should. Um, just I don't know why, but even, like, I've probably eaten 500 calories less, 400 calories less the last couple of days. Um, and it's already like, I can tell, like, I'm hungry, and I'm kinda doing it subconsciously, but also, like, okay, I've kinda wanted to stop, like, indulging a little bit too much. And so I'm not even in, like, a fat loss phase or anything right now. I just kinda said, "Okay, let me tighten up a little bit," and I'm already like, "Ugh," like, the fun's over. I can't just but it's also, like, a nervous energy. Like, you're talking about July 1st is gonna be your start. Like, my July 1st is the marathon prep, and I'm really looking forward to it because I'm excited to start that goal again, but I'm nervous as hell. You know what I mean? And I think it's weird. I just had this thought while I'm saying it. Last year was the first time I ran a marathon, and I started July 1st with all this energy and vigor, and I just didn't know. Like, you don't know what you don't know, right? And so you enjoy it. Now I know. And so I'm excited because I know what I need to do to optimize it and improve. But also I know the pain and the time and the energy and effort. So it's like you're excited for it because you want to do better, but you also know what you're about to endure. I don't know, it's like a
Yeah, it's
love-hate, like
well, it's like going into a hard working set. I think about,
yeah,
like, "Hey, I'm about to do this set of leg pressing or Bulgarian split squats. I know it's gonna hurt, especially by the time I get to the end of the set," but you do it anyways. You get that
yeah,
nervous energy, and yeah, even you describing that getting ready for the marathon prep, I'm actually just really thinking about, "Holy crap, I'm about to start my bodybuilding prep in July, in July," and, I'm thinking too, like, it is gonna be temporary, it's not gonna be a forever thing, but I'm like, I'm gonna be dieting for, like, 10 months or 11 months, and
yeah,
that actually is just hitting usually it
that's
hits me, but it's
crazy.
really hitting me right now, I'm like, "Wow."
We're gonna call you Will
So, like,
Tennyson with your 200 days.
yeah, yeah. So, I'm it's okay when you're in it, but yeah, those weeks and months beforehand when you're thinking about it, you got
Mhm.
a little bit of that the butterflies, the anxious energy, that little bit of an edge. I'm just, it's funny. I'm feeling that now that you're mentioning it.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of funny because, like, I was telling you, I have some friends, asking when my next show is gonna be. It's so funny because a little off topic here, but that's okay. Um, like, I loved the bodybuilding. Like, I was like, I remember I told you I was just gonna do one and I'm done. And then immediately, like, yeah, I'm just doing another one and probably more until I win. But I also said the same thing about the marathon. I was like, I'm gonna do one and done, and I immediately sign up for the next one. But like, so many people ask me, when you're doing your next show, when you're doing your next show. And I'm like, Valentine's Day next year, but I have to run this marathon in between. And it's almost like, damn it. You know what I mean? But I still am looking forward to it. And I think I'll probably, like, if you ask me probably in August, I'll probably be like on a runner's high. You know what I mean? Where I'm just like, oh yeah, I just ran 20 miles today and I love it. And everyone's gonna be like, what the hell? So I think it's because, recency biased, and I don't know, they're different levels of hard. And like, tomorrow's chest day and I'm super pumped. No matter what, nothing can make my day bad tomorrow when I get to go hit the bench press. But going to run, like, 10 miles, that's not fun.
It's not as
Um,
appealing, eh?
yeah.
That's the thing though. It's like whether you're fat loss dieting or you're prepping for a marathon, all the things that are really worth doing are difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, for
That's just
sure.
the thing. It's the cost of doing business.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
trade-off. It's going to be hard, but the rewards are usually the hardest things usually yield the greatest rewards. So really long fat loss diet for a bodybuilding prep, really difficult marathon prep for the marathon, usually yields the the most fulfilling rewards from my
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah, I love it too. And it provides a sustainable approach to it afterwards. The longer, the more balanced, the more realistic, reasonable. Um, and then it helps you transition to other aspects too, because you've built those skill sets like we talked about before.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Cool.
Um,
So what do you think? Are there any other topics surrounding fat loss dieting or coping with hunger or strategies to coping with hunger that you want to cover or you think we might have missed, or do you think we hit all the big points for today?
um, I think we hit a lot of the big points. I would say two things that we didn't really talk on: water. Drink a ton of water. I feel like a lot of times when you're hungry, you're actually thirsty. I don't know if that's scientifically proven, but I've heard that a lot, you know. And I drink like shout out to LaCroix. I'm not sponsored, but if they want to. I drink a lot of these LaCroix, these carbonated things that help fill me up. Um, but I think water in general, like, just helps fill you up. So if you are getting a little bit hungry, drink a little bit of water. I think protein shakes are an awesome supplement to help hit your protein goals. Also, maybe a little bit of an in between. Shout out Legion again. Not sponsored. Well, some of us aren't. But
You can
so
use my code if you want, code
yes,
Kaplan.
there we go. Get it. And then I think the biggest thing. Oh, they have a buy one get one 50% off for Memorial Day coming up.
Yeah.
So there you go. Everyone go get it. I got their cereal. I've been trying out their cereal. It's good. I had the cinnamon one first. But I bought the variety pack, so it's good. Oh yes. Okay, is it good? I love how you have that right there. It's just like,
I haven't tried it yet. I'm using it to put I'm using it as a stand for my
dude,
microphone.
dude. For my stand, I'm using the book
Oh,
7 Highly Effective Habits. Yeah,
oh hell yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I love
So
it.
that's funny.
That's awesome.
I think the last thing and the biggest thing, and this kind of specific, I mean, this goes for everything, specifically for fat loss and dieting. And I struggle with this. And we had to come to Jesus moment in our bodybuilding prep, but not lying to yourself. Um, I think being honest with yourself, finding friends, coaches, confidants that will support you regardless. Because you just have to be honest with yourself and admit when you make mistakes, and then when you fall off the wagon, which you will, when you have those cheat meals, which you will, understand that it's okay, and not like being ashamed of it or hiding from it, but embracing it and learning from it, and just it's not the end of the world kind of thing. Like, it's okay. Um, I think that is huge because I even did that. I mean, I think we were talking about it. I was lying to myself and to you all the way to up until a month out, and I think it's a pretty common thing. Um, but if someone could master that early, and it's simple, like, I think what you said is it's it's simple but easy, but I think it's like simple but not easy. Like, it's a simple concept, but it's not easy. It's difficult. But yeah, so I think that's the thing. Like, drink a lot of water and just be honest with yourself when you mess up, and then because it's going to help you get the goals faster. When you say if Sam or I say, okay, hey, just track what you're going to eat for the first 2 weeks and just tell us exactly what you ate, and then you don't tell us exactly what you ate, we just wasted 2 weeks. Like, we need the data. So just be honest, and it's okay. It's okay if you eat 5,000 calories a day. That's cool. Like, then we'll figure it out. So yeah.
That's the thing. It's if you fall off the horse, you get back on, but also try to learn
Mm-hmm.
something from it. Learn if you binge, for example, what led to the binge? Was it because you're hungry? if you're hungry, if that was the cause, could you have made your meals more satiating throughout the
Yeah.
day? Was it because of a social gathering where there's like our struggles, which is like there's food out in front of you and there was difficulty with like just saying no to the treats on the table? So what's the solution to that for the next time? So I
Mhm.
think that's the important thing from my experiences. Like mess ups happen, but if we learn from them, what we can do the next time we're in a similar situation, then we can be more successful in the future. I
Yeah.
also like the other things, like, about the fluid intake in particular. I love the carbonated beverages. Your stomach, I don't know if you've heard this before, but
Mm.
your stomach actually, like, literally has pressure receptors
Oh,
that
cool.
signal to the brain a feeling of fullness. That's why drinking carbonated beverages are actually a great idea when you're doing something like fat loss dieting between meals, with meals, because it literally keeps you feeling fuller. I mean, it's not always an
Yeah.
absolute game changer. It's not like eating a full meal, but it can help take the edge off enough that you can survive just fine till your next meal, for example. Other fluids that really work well for me are like decaf coffee or herbal
Mhm.
teas,
Yes.
ones that have and I have decaf after like 11 a.m. I won't have any caffeine. The last caffeine I'll have is my pre-workout, and then that's it. It's all
Yeah.
decaf coffees from there. But coffee, and then coffee in the morning, caffeinated is
Yeah.
just fine for most people. But coffee has an appetite suppressing effect for most people. So like that's an idea too. Herbal tea can work as well. And then um, straight water is fine if that works well for you. And diet soda can be great. I know you mentioned carbonated beverages, just
Mhm.
especially for those who are used to drinking like regular Dr. Pepper or Coke or whatever,
Yeah.
switching to the diet version, if that works well for you, it's it can be incredibly helpful for fat
Yeah.
loss, staying satiated, cutting your calories really, really easy that way without it feeling like you're missing out on something. I know that the flavor is not the exact same, that's for sure, but the palate changes. You can get used to it really quickly if you make the change.
But on that point, I don't know how many people have done this. I haven't done it with the soda yet. I've done it with alcohol in the past. If you put a blind thing and have them taste, I don't know how many people can actually know. Okay. I had a friend who said his favorite beer is Bud Light, and he could not pick out of 6 beers which one was the Bud Light. Right. So, like, I don't think people say they think they like the soda taste, but they don't know.
That's a really, really good point. So you won't
Yeah.
even, I mean, at the end of the day, you won't even know what you're missing.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
no, but I love that fluid intake and the specific beverages that you decide to drink can really, really help with leaving you feeling more satiated, which can make the whole process more
Yeah. I
sustainable.
think most people can get their 500 calorie deficit if that's what we're going with the standard, whatever. But with just beverages, most people.
A lot of people.
Yeah, yeah, um, yeah. I think those were the big ones. I think it was good. I think I'm hoping some people listening, like, just a lot of maybe picked up a little bit of things here and there to hopefully help you get started if it's on you, or go all freaking in. If you're already lean and you want to get freaking shredded, go crazy like me and just eat rice cakes.
Yeah.
Like so
And also too, I do think it's worth noting, and I will start a lot of people like that come and work with me. Some people do benefit from taking like a softer approach. Some people are okay with going and starting to like meal plan right away.
Mhm,
If
mhm.
if you're someone that is open to that, even if you're just a little bit open to it, I would give it a shot if you're open to that. If it's a little bit intimidating at the beginning, then starting with a softer approach, just taking out the sodas and alcohol and junk foods, like
Mhm.
great starting point. But if you're open to going a little
Yep.
bit more deeper right at the beginning, you don't have to intentionally um, hold yourself back if you have the desire to start.
Yeah,
So
and honestly, I think that's I'm glad you brought up. That's a great point because for anyone listening out there, like,
personality,
yeah, like,
it's
and
personality.
and for anyone listening, Sam is awesome with that. Like, both times I've worked with him, very accommodating and kind of like whatever I like. Even like we said with the bodybuilding, I kind of had a few non-negotiables, and I think you didn't agree, but you were like, okay, like, and you worked with me, because I think starting and getting motivated about it and is more important than whatever our personal beliefs are, because like whatever works for individuals, I think is the most important. And of course, you were right at the end, and I had to, admit that I was wrong. But yeah, so I think it's awesome.
Sweet. Well,
Yeah,
I appreciate the shout out. Thank you.
definitely. I have one more shout out too, if it's good. Just want to shout out Brandon, who was on a couple episodes ago. Got his pro card, so everyone saw him on your last 2 episodes ago, and just go follow him and give him a congratulations. He looked lean, shredded.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
He absolutely crushed it. The last time I talked to him, so that was, as you noted, that was 2 episodes ago. That was a few days, that was several days before he competed and won his pro card. So
he was in such
pretty
a
cool.
good mood for like a few days before a show. I would have been like, leave me alone.
Yeah.
What an
I'll
awesome
go
guy.
ahead. I'll go ahead. I'll link that video at the end of this one. So if you want to see that, and I'll leave it in the description below. So if you want, go ahead and check out that episode so that you can see what went on behind the scenes with Brandon leading up to winning his pro card, as well as getting a full overview of his background with lifting weights and getting into bodybuilding. So it's really cool. So if you're interested in seeing all that stuff and getting to hear firsthand from a pro natural bodybuilder, go check out that video. Again, it'll be linked below, and also I'll leave that as the end screen video for you to click on after this one. But yeah, shout out to Brandon Emslie.